people had to become wiser, and of course that's a very difficult thing to figure out, because you can even question whether there is such a thing as wisdom, and then I thought, well, that's what the universities are supposed to do, especially the humanities, mostly in particular. It's supposed to make you wise. That's what it's for, and it's doing a terrible job of that in my estimation. It's more decimating people as far as I can tell, and undermining whatever ethic they have rather than making people wise. But I think that we have to become wise. I don't think there's a choice. I think it's a matter of survival, and it's more than that, because if you're wise in your own life, you're going to have a way better life, like incomparably better, because you're going to sleep soundly with a good conscience at night. And people say that's worth more than money, and that's worth more than money. I know lots of people who have lots of money, and let me tell you, money protects you. You're as well protected from the world by money right now as you ever will be for the rest of your life, because most of life's fundamental problems can't be solved with money. Like rich people get divorced, they have affairs, their children get sick, they have all the problems you have, and that's partly because you're already rich. And so you might think that if you had a bunch more money things would be better, but it's just not true. In fact, in some ways they might be worse, because money can open up the possibility of all sorts of temptations to you that you just can't afford at the moment. So like economics, we've already solved that problem fundamentally, and we're rapidly solving it everywhere in the world, right? I mean, the world economy is growing so damn fast that you can't even imagine how you could possibly make it grow any faster. It's crazy. We've lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty in the last 15 years, The UN set a goal by 2015, I think it was to cut poverty by half, if I remember correctly, and they reached it 2 years early, it's like, it's unbelievable. So then I started to try to understand what it might be to live, and really what I was looking for was not so much to live a life that was wise, but at least to live a life that wasn't pathologically unwise, and I thought of the sorts of things that people were doing to one another in the Auschwitz camps and in the Gulag Archipelago, and all of that horror that was perpetrated on people as definitely unwise. Whatever else you might say about it was unwise. And so then I thought, well, maybe there's a way to figure out how you could not do that. And so and I think that's my sense, is that when you come to university to learn how to be a civilized person, which is what's supposed to happen at university, otherwise it's just a trade school, and you might as well go to trade school as far as I'm concerned if you want to learn something that will get you a job. It's a lot faster, and it's more certain, and it's useful. If you're not being taught to be a citizen at university, then why bother with it? So that's what we're trying to figure out, and that's part of that cloud of mythological fantasy that surrounds our culture. It's part of its deep history that we're trying to, if you grapple with the humanities and with art and all of that you're trying to master and incorporate and pull into you, so that you're situated properly in history, and you're not just floating in the void of this tiny individuality that's divorced from everything else. You're weak in that circumstance. All right, so that's more of an explanation of why I'm trying to puzzle through these things and trying to puzzle through them with you. So anyways, we talked about the song last week, and I made a hypothesis to you. We'll go through this quickly. It's doggerel. It's not great poetry, but it's irrelevant. It was a very popular song. It's quite beautiful. In the movie, it's actually sung by like a heavenly choir. That's what it sounds like. So it's got this cathedral. You can imagine people singing it in a cathedral, essentially. And so that's not accidental. It's purposeful. It partakes of that, what would you call it? It partakes of that aesthetic. That's it. So the filmmakers are implying that what is about to be shown to you has this divine element, essentially, and that's signified by the choir of voices that sings this song. And the song says, fundamentally something like this, is that if you lift up your eyes above the temporal into the transcendent, and so that's what exists in the heavenly world, in the stars, if you pick an ultimate goal, if you pick the right ultimate goal, then, and anyone can do this, that's the other thing, it's democratic, it's anyone can do this, so that's the second proposition. It doesn't matter who you are, you can do this. And so I think that's a reflection of the idea of the divinity of the individual. It's like there's something about each individual that's valuable regardless of their idiosyncrasies, and so they have this potential that they can manifest. And how do you manifest it? Well, you pick the right goal. And what's the right goal? Well, it's high, it's elevated, it's above the mundane. Now what does that mean? Well, you don't really know. You don't really know. That's why it's signified by a star, and a star is something that glimmers in the night, right? So it's a source of light in the darkness. And so there's a metaphor there, obviously there's a metaphor there. And the star is the star that's the star of Hollywood, you know, the person that you emulate. That's part of it, because an ideal it's going to be a human ideal of some sort that you're aiming at, and so the ideal human being is the star that you're aiming at. Maybe it's something like that, if that's what you're aiming at. And you might say, well, what should you aim at in life? And one answer is, well, why don't you aim at being whatever you could be that would be the best? Now, you don't know what that is exactly, because how do you know? You know, but you could think, well, that would be really good if I could have it. And then you could say, well, can I think of anything better than that? And if the answer is no, then, well, why not go for that? You know, and you might say, well, it's too ambitious, it takes too much responsibility. It's like, yeah, those are definitely problems. And one of the things that I've figured out over the years is that if you offered the person the opportunity, you know, because people say, well, life doesn't really have any ultimate meaning. It's like, yeah, okay, fine, so fine. Let's say it has an ultimate meaning. But that in order to experience that ultimate meaning, you have to take on ultimate responsibility for what you do. Well, that's a heavy price to pay to have a meaningful life. You know, and you might say, well, there's no damn way I'm going to do that. I'll just go for the, you know, pointless, I'll go for the trivial, pointless perspective, which, you know, is kind of hard on me existentially, but it frees me up. I can do whatever the hell I want moment to moment. I don't have any ultimate responsibility. And so then you think, well, that's kind of a good deal. And then but that raises this weird specter of doubt, which is, well, when you hear people talk about the ultimate futility of life, is it because life is ultimately futile, or is it because they've decided that they would just as soon not adopt the responsibility, and they use that real decision, which is to not adopt the responsibility, they rationalize that by proposing that life is ultimately meaningless. And like, you know, I kind of buy that. I really do think that's what's going on. So, but maybe not. But it could be that if you want to have an ultimately meaningful life, that you have to adopt ultimate responsibility. Makes sense. What might that mean? Well, one thing it might mean is that, and I do think it means this, is that I think it was Alexander Pope, but I might be wrong about that, who said, nothing human is foreign to me. And that's a hell of a statement, right? Because if you think about all the things that human beings are capable of, and they're capable of some, like if you really want to know what people are capable of, you should read about Unit 731. But I would not recommend it, because if you read it, you will never forget it, and you will be sorry that you read it. But you'll know. Anyways, to say that nothing human is foreign to you, that's a hell of a thing to say, because that means that what other people have done, you could do. And that also means you need to take responsibility for that. That's no joke, you know, it's a big deal to do that in even a trivial manner. Anyway, so the idea is that you can elevate, if you elevate your viewpoint to some transcendent ethic, you want what's ultimately good, you really want that, whatever that is, you don't know, but that's what you're aiming at. Says that, well, then it says this strange thing that, well, what you want will all of a sudden come to you. Well, that's a proposition, and it's the proposition that's basically played out in the movie. It's a hypothesis. The hypothesis is the best way to orient yourself in life is to orient yourself towards the highest good that you're capable of imagining, and then aim at that, and then things will work out the best way they can for you. And I believe that's correct. My observation of life has led me to see that that seems to be correct. So for example, you don't get something you don't aim at. That just doesn't work out, and so lots of people aim at nothing, and that's what they get. So if you aim at something, you have a reasonable crack at getting it. You know, you tend to change what you're aiming at a bit along the way, because like, what do you know? You know, you aim there, you're wrong, but you get a little closer and then you aim there, and you're still wrong. You get a little closer and you aim there, and you know, as you move towards what you're aiming at, your characterization of what to aim at becomes more and more sophisticated. And so it doesn't really matter if you're wrong to begin with, as long as you're smart enough to learn on the way, and as long as you specify a goal. So specify a vague one. I want things to be the best they could be, and I'm willing to learn what best means as I go along. Okay, so fine. And then you get what you truly need, we'll say. Well, maybe not. No, if your heart is in your dream, what does that mean? Well, that to me reflects this idea of a kind of integrated viewpoint. One of the things Jung proposed was that as you integrate yourself psychologically, what happens is that your rationality integrates with your emotions. They stop being opposed forces. Like the Enlightenment idea is that rationality and desire are opposites and enemies in a sense. And the Jungian notion is, and the psychoanalytic notion I would say in general, and the humanist notion even perhaps, is that no, that's not right. What you want to do is you want to integrate your rationality with your emotions and your motivations. They're not separable, even technically. They have to work together, and that all has to be integrated with your body. Not only do you have to take your heart into account and notice what it is that you want and don't want, but you also have to embody that. You have to act that out in the world. So fine, so that's what that means. And if you do that, then, well, then your horizons open up. And I also believe that's true. You know, I've known people in my life who are insanely successful, like insanely successful. And those people are, like, they're pretty damn together, man. You know, like they're tough, smart, strategic, generous. You know, they're always giving people opportunities, honest, like they've got it all. You know, and sometimes, now I'm not saying that everyone who's wildly successful is wildly successful because they've got themselves together, but, you know, because there are crooks and, you know, there are people who gain status one way or another by nefarious means. But that's a lot more unstable than you might think. And I can't say exactly if you pursue that route, you're going to pay for it. Like, you'll have your money or whatever it is, but it's not going to do much good for you. So it does seem to me to be the people that have integrated themselves and that are pursuing a noble goal, a high goal, who actually are able to do remarkable things. And remarkable things can be done at every level. You know, it isn't like you have to change the world. Like, as a whole, it could be that you do something remarkable within your family. You know, and that can be tremendously admirable. You know, someone's got to take care of a family member if they're sick. You know, like there's heroic acts that you can undertake in the local environment, and maybe that will go unheralded, let's say, but that doesn't mean that it isn't remarkable. I mean, I've met people who are so damaged, you just can't imagine it, and yet, well, one person I met when I was in Montreal was this woman, and she was just ruined, man. She looked like a street person, and she was so shy, she couldn't even look at you. Like, she basically looked at the ground because it was like there was light emanating from everyone else, and she was way too timid and humble to even bear it. You know, and partly what I was doing was trying to get her to straighten up and not look so street person-ish, because it wasn't going very well for her in social interactions, you know. But it turned out that isn't what she came to the behavior therapy unit for. And she had her aunt, I think she lived with her aunt who was like schizophrenic, and then her aunt's boyfriend was an alcoholic who like went on long harangues about the devil, and it's like, really, man. And she wasn't bright, this woman, she really wasn't, and you know, she didn't really have a job, and it was just like, it was just not good in every way. And then she also, you know, had this unbelievable humility, but then, you know, it turned out what she wanted. I just couldn't bloody well believe this, that she had this dog and she used to walk it around. She took care of the dog, and that, you know, that was a good thing. And she'd actually been an inpatient at the Douglas Hospital, which is where I was working. And there were inpatients in the Douglas Hospital, and this was back in the 80s, and those people were like, she was like Superwoman compared to the inpatients at the Douglas Hospital. Those people looked like they were from a Hieronymus Bosch painting, because they had deinstitutionalized everyone that could possibly be deinstitutionalized, and so the only people that were left were people who couldn't be deinstitutionalized, and so those would have been people who were in the psych wards for like 30 years. all of the hospitals were connected by tunnels underground, and the patients used to hang out down there by the Coke machine and so forth. And one day I took my brother down there, he was visiting, and like it was just like, he just turned white, you know, because it was just, really, I don't know if you know Hieronymus Bosch, he's very an interesting painter to say the least, but that's what it was like. And so here was her idea. She'd come to the behavior therapy unit because she'd been in the inpatient ward for a while, and she met some of these like ruined people. And she tried to get the hospital. She thought, well, I'm walking my dog, you know, and well, maybe I could take one of these patients out for a walk, you know. And she'd been talking to the hospital administrators, trying to get her, allow her to go, you know, take out one of these patients and go for a walk with her dog. And basically she had come to the behavior therapy unit because that's what she wanted to do. It's like, man, that person, she just blew me away.